back table if anyone has any questions or interest. We have no public comments scheduled this morning, so we'll hear from our Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Scott.
Good morning. How we got? We've, over the last couple of days, we've had some pretty somber items that have come up with one of our commissioner relatives, as well as a kid who's a resident who plays for the OHA heavy hitters football team. And Demontrius Elliott, he's a kid from Nathan Hill who drowned in the pool. I wanted to acknowledge, with respect to our commissioner, her family, as well as the young kid. I had an opportunity to help coach the football team, and it just goes to show you, at any given time, anything can happen. And I know we all have kids or grandkids and siblings in the world. But it hit home when that happened. And it also goes to another issue of what happened, certainly with the Nathan Hale issue in the pool. As everybody in the room is aware, we deal with risk every day as the largest landlord. And it's important that you remain prepared and have a full understanding of what your job and responsibilities are. I'm talking to my staff here. But, we deal with a lot of different people on any given day in Section 8 public housing. And we just have to be vigilant and careful in the decisions we make, obviously the actions we take, and how we address those issues, matters, and challenges that we see every day. So this kid died, hit home for me because I have twins, 4 kids, 7-year-old twins, and 13 and 11-year-old. And at any given time, anything can happen. And it's important that we all be vigilant and have a full understanding of how we take care of the people we're responsible for. So the second item I gave you is our major initiatives. Glenn, I gave you a handout. As you folks can see, we have a strategic planning item that Jonathan's going to talk about a little bit in more detail. We're going to do a salary compensation study, and we're also going to talk about the development proposal.
That'll be during we will have a small executive session today to discuss the negotiations.
But as you can see with Pleasant View and Southside and Brad and some of these other initiatives that we're embarking upon, we have a lot on our plate over the course of the next 3 months throughout the calendar year 2015. I ask everybody in the room, before we kind of put more items on our plate, let's just focus on clearing these big major items and initiatives off this paper, and let's kind of ride herd on making sure that we're able to follow through on this stuff. I know that's been a big sore spot with some of our commissioners and people in the community, but these are our major initiatives for the next 6, 12, 18, 24 months. And we're going to really focus our efforts in clearing this stuff off. So that's really all I have. It was a short month for us. We have the holidays coming up, so basically we still have our operational items that we have to move forward with. So we might have any questions.
We do have a lot of items and a lot of things to cover in the next year, so hopefully a lot of work from our board and our staff, and as long as everyone works together, we'll get through it.
Thanks.
Okay, and as always, if anyone has any thoughts or questions or concerns on any of these initiatives, me know, we can contact, we can discuss. Many of these will be flushed out in various committees that they're assigned to, and we'll vet them, so this will be a large part of our next year. Moving on, we've got the approval of the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, we'll move number 1 off the agenda.
We'll move number 1 and number 3. Does anyone want to remove anything else from the consent agenda?
I have to abstain from voting because one of the items is someone that is on my board, White Lotus Development, so.
Let's pull 4 off as well, and then we'll have, that's why Ben's got to pull 1 off, so we're having to vote on that. Okay, so that leaves us with items 2 and 5.
Motion approved.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second to approve items 2 and 5. Roll call?
Commissioner Bradley?
Yes.
Commissioner Romano?
Yes.
Commissioner Gray?
Yes.
Commissioner Bergman? Yes. Chair Taylor?
Yes. All right, we're good. We'll move to item 1, the minutes. Commissioner Gray is going to state as he was here last month. If anyone has any questions or comments on the minutes, otherwise I'll entertain a motion.
Motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call?
Commissioner Bradley?
Yes.
Commissioner Romano?
Yes.
Commissioner Bergman? Yes. And Chair Taylor?
Yes. Let's go to item 3, the eviction services. Mr. Forsberg is here. I don't know if there was any comments he had to say about that. I had a couple questions. I read the procurement minutes. I understand we're 2 separate contracts, 40 grand each, that's a cap. I assume most of those fees are going to be just appearance fees. All the paralegal work is still going to be done in-house.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, the only thing I really wanted to say is that I would like to maybe have staff keep an eye on how our billings on that, and at the end of the year, I want to have a good discussion about whether or not it's a good idea to continue to outsource that, or whether we should bring that back in-house. I know right now, and I appreciate that right now, we have a situation where we need to outsource this because we need to get it done, and we're still hiring legal counsel. But I think once we get through a year with legal counsel, I'd like to take a good hard look at bringing that back in-house.
If I can, Madam
Yeah.
Chair, we had a fairly lengthy discussion about that.
I could see that.
Through
Yes.
several-
That eliminated some of my questions.
Yeah,
Let's put it that way.
so we had a lengthy discussion about that, and I think your points are well taken. They were considered and talked about during our meeting, so I think as long as we stay on top of that, as long as you stay on top of that, maybe we'll it'll flush itself out, I think. But it was a really good discussion, before we
I think that's the extent of it for me, and I'm sure Graham appreciates that. We're just trying to make sure that we make this as cost effective as possible, but I appreciate your assistance in our, so.
Motion approved.
Second.
Got a motion to second, roll call?
Commissioner Bradley?
Yes.
Commissioner Romano?
Yes.
Commissioner Gray?
Yes.
Commissioner Bergman? Yes. And Chair Taylor?
Yes. Okay, item 4 is the White Lotus Group project-based voucher award. Mr. Romano has noted he's got a conflict because I assume Arun is on your, I believe Arun's on your board.
He's our co-chair.
There you go. So, does anyone have any questions or comments or discussion on the PDD award? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion second, can I roll call?
Commissioner Bradley?
Yes.
Commissioner Gray?
Yes.
Commissioner Bergman? Yes. Chair Taylor?
Yes. Okay. That takes care of the consent agenda, so we'll move on to reports and discussion items. We'll start with finance.
We had our meeting on Tuesday, just the highlights of that, and then we'll have Michael go ahead and go through these. We did meet over at Creighton, and we did Skype with our auditors out of Birmingham, Alabama, and we got a very, very good audit report, and we'll talk about that throughout this a little bit. The other thing I want to call attention to, that the budget got sent out to each one of us. We will go ahead and any questions that anybody would have on that budget, we'll get a memo out to you to remind you, but I'd like to have any questions back by the 10th of December so we can respond to that. If you recall, in December, our meeting will be a week earlier than normal, so we'll go ahead and approve the budget at that point. But I know it's got sent out to everybody, and I'm sure we get it that much in advance and kind of set it aside. So if if you'd take the time to kind of go through that. We approved the whole process this year. Michael's got an additional staff person on board that's helped a lot with that. Tim Rooney is his name. Had the opportunity to meet him on Tuesday. He's a very bright young individual. But we feel pretty good with our budget process this year. Last year, Michael was just kind of getting into it, and the main things we've figured out and we're really drilled down on is our maintenance expense, which is always a little out of whack. We figured out the insurance now, so we've got that all pretty much intact. And then, of course, our biggest issue is what our top line revenues are going to be coming out of Washington, D.C. So we're basing it on a historical at this point. We'll have to judge that as we go into next year. So, Michael, if you want to go ahead and hit the October numbers or any other items you have on your agenda there.
For October financials, we'll just go through these at a high level. We went through them the other day in the Finance Committee. For public housing for October, we had revenues of $1.1 million against expenses of $1.031 million for a net income for public housing of $66,000 for the month. Year to date, we've got an unfavorable variance of $345,000. A lot of that has to do with administrative expenses being over budget by $251,000, and resident services and protective services being over budget by $159,000 and $151,000. Those overages are expenses and fees that are charged to the program side, and the expense is on the program side, the revenue is on the COC side, charges that HUD allows us to charge out for the work that we do in the central office. So public housing incurs those expenses. For Section 8, we have revenues for the month of $2,290,000 against expenses of $2,525,000 for a net loss of $134,000 for the month. Year to date, Section 8 is $700,000 unfavorable. A good portion of that unfavorable is due to mid-year, as we discussed in July. HUD determined that the housing authorities were holding on to too much money, so they withdrew $1.1 million of our net restricted asset balance from the subsidy that we would have gotten for that month. It was a one-time deal. It wasn't just OHA, it was all housing authorities across the country. So that was a $1.1 million hit to the monies that we normally receive. So from that, we're $700,000 down year to date. On Section 8 admin, we had revenues of $216,000 against expenses of $212,000 for net income of a little over $4,000. We're favorable on Section 8 admin by $153,000 year to date, due in large part to HUD grants and subsidies being over budget in this area by $300,000 for the year. Again, that being offset by administrative expenses of $151,000. So over by $300,000, under by $151,000 for a favorable $153,000 year. On the COC side, we had revenues for the month of $330,000 against expenses of $296,000. So we had net income for the month of $33,000. We're unfavorable, or we're favorable year to date by $389,000. Favorable on fee revenue and favorable on admin expenses. Fee revenue was over budget by $301,000. That's the revenue that the COCC gets from the programmatic side. And admin expenses for COCC are under budget for the year by $274,000, mostly due to salaries and benefits. Unfavorable for COCC is resident service expenses are over budget and insurance expense is over budget, which is one of those program areas that we needed to clean up on the revenue side. Housing in Omaha, revenues for the month were $99,000 against expenses of $110,000. We also have transfers in that program of $45,000, so we have a net income of $33,000 for the month. Year to date, we're at $41,000 unfavorable. And we had discussions in the past about Iowa revenues being under what we had anticipated. On the payable side, check payable schedule in front of you, which lists out all the current payables, which payables are all hitting within the 0 to 30 day payment category. And just to reiterate on that, payables don't, the clock doesn't start ticking on payables until all the approvals, everything's into the system, and then the 30 days starts again. We've got the normal big dollar players in there, utilities, some HVAC work. And we've got $82,700 for Nelrock, which was the GPNA work that they did. And then we've also got the bill from the auditor, the April board, for the annual audit. And as you can see, all payables are being paid within 30 days.
Any questions on the financials? Here again, I'll remind you to hopefully pull out the budget, and any questions you would have, address those to Michael, and hopefully do that by the 10th so we can get back to you, so that on our board meeting, next board meeting in December, we'll go ahead and approve that. So, any other questions on the financials? If not,
No, I just have one suggestion comment. In reading the procurement meeting notes, I might suggest maybe including the payable again as part of the procurement packet, because I think it would help the procurement committee understand the overall expenditures and kind of where they're going on a month-to-month basis. I know they're in our board report, but as far as your guys' meeting every month, I think that might help give you guys a bigger overall picture of what's going on. If you have that in front of you every month and look at it and discuss it.
Yes.
So maybe just include the payable and with procurement gates. Okay, that's all I have.
that includes the financials.
Okay, anything else on budget and finances? Any questions or comments? Just again, please, any questions or concerns in the budget? Give them to Mr. Bradley by the 10th. That way the finance committee can kind of address or deal with those during their committee meeting, and then we can have a budget we can hopefully approve. And stuff. We have to have it submitted by the 31st. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is asset management. Susan and Terrence.
Good morning, Madam Chair.
Good morning.
Commissioners.
Good morning.
You have before you our report, discussing a few highlights for the month of October. We had 11 properties at 100% and 7 properties maintained at 98% or greater. We finished the month at 98%, so we had a pretty good month as far as leasing on the public housing side. You do not have the recertification report this month because there was a glitch in HUD's processing or the recertification system, the REACT system, but we were able to download the report after the board reports went out, and we were at 99.92. So we maintained another good month as far as recertification, and we had 0 for the second consecutive month of no late research. So the staff is doing a great job in keeping up with their recertifications. That's all I have. We'll be more than happy to answer any questions you have.
And then Ohio, we look like we have, we're doing better in Ohio on the vacancy, so I think our Ohio revenue should be picking back up again. Does anyone have any questions or comments on asset management? If not, we'll move on to Section 8. Good job.
Good morning, Commissioners. Just wanted to bring a few things to your attention. We have completed our application process for the Section 8 waiting list. We completed that a week ago Saturday. And we currently have just a little under 400 families on our Section 8 waiting list. So we will continue to update those families, and we probably will not have another Section 8 briefing until after the first of the year. And then at that time, once we start issuing vouchers again after the first of the year, then we'll open the waiting list up again, hopefully maybe February or March to accept additional applications for our waiting list.
Anyone have any questions or comments for Joan on Section 8? No, we'll go on to Ohio. Did not meet last month. They will meet this month because I believe we have some items to address with regard to development. So I will meet in December. Next item is capital development and construction. Is someone going to cover that for Ryan?
Yeah, we, as you can see with our notice of violation, we have about 6 that we're working on. Many of those are fire units that we're waiting for HUD to approve so we can tear down. We're going to have a conference call with HUD as it pertains to our RAD deal. There's still some back and forth on the housing authority and they're called replacement reserve requirements, how much we need to put in replacement reserve. So we're trying to get clarification from Washington on that. Ryan and staff are still looking at the physical needs assessment. We hope to have something to you guys in the next 30, 60 days. And as we did in October, we entered into an MOU for the project, which we're moving forward in Lincoln for tax credits. Not the housing authority, the developer. So that's really all I have. And then an executive session will discuss happening in front of you.
Is the reserve a requirement what's causing the cash flow issues on the RAD program?
Yes, quite frankly. HUD is asking us to put a substantial amount of monies in reserves, post-construction, or post-rehab. The bank is saying that we don't have to put as much money as HUD is requiring. So we're trying to come to some kind of middle ground of how much we can stomach. As a result, nothing is happening. Hopefully we talk to them on Tuesday and they see our point. And that's what's holding up this deal. As you also know, we submitted our application to the state for $800,000. I wanted to thank the board for convening last Thursday, sometime in October. We submitted that to the state. We hope to get somewhere close to $800,000 for that application.
Which would go a long way to actually helping us make that program work.
That would go into the rehab of the 306 scattered sites. We're crossing our fingers to get that money. It's a grant, it's not a loan. So I appreciate the councilman and the vice chair of the council, as well as the president of the council, providing a letter of support for that application. We turned that around within a few hours. So I wanted to thank you. If you could make a call to DED and push that would be
Let me see what I can work.
It's a grant, folks. It's not a loan.
Yep. So that's hugely important. So it reduces the amount of money we need to borrow for that program. Does anyone have any questions or comments on Mr. Durant's report or anything Mr. Scott has shared? And just as an update on, as everyone's aware of the Casino Group's MOU with regard to the Pleasant View site, and I did actually have an opportunity to run into Othello the other day in the building. They had they're scheduled to be on planning board in December or January.
They're hoping for December,
Yeah.
but
Might be January.
it looks more like January.
But that's good. Their project's moving forward, and their project moves forward, ours will as well, and so there's action going on. Any questions or comments? Otherwise, we'll move on to procurement.
Madam Chairman, we have a report from the
Morning. Okay, anyone have questions on procurement? Those items we have were the legal contracts we approved this morning. Not
Hey, can I add on the second page of this report? I know that many of our commissioners are really encourage the housing authority to use non-traditional businesses, as well as the federal government with Section 3 thing. We do a pretty good clip as far as extending contracts to some of our non-traditional partners. As you can see at the bottom, it looks we did 42% for the month of October. We spent $464,000 and we expended that amount. That's pretty good. That's, housing authorities generally don't do that much in MVWB business, so just wanted to thank the staff for going the extra mile.
And I know that's something that's very important to the board, and it's clear from the committee meeting minutes as well. So that's also something I think as next year rolls out, that committee can work with Steve's office to continue this level of commitment to those programs. Anything else on procurement? Not move on to human resources. Morning, Gail.
Good morning, Commissioners. You have my report in front of you. This month, for us, we are still working on health insurance renewals and property insurance renewals. Right now, we have a long range of headache insurance companies, and we're trying to leverage that too. So we don't have to insurance companies. Hopefully, we'll have that ironed out by the end of the month.
And then just the only comment I would make is that Commissioner Romano, and Commissioner Watson and I have met with some of our legal council candidates, and so we look forward to having somebody on board soon. Any other questions or concerns or comments on human resources? Not, we'll move on to David Community Services. Morning, Sal.
Good morning, Commissioner. You do have my report in front of you. Unfortunately, I don't have any highlights for you this month. I'll be glad to take any questions.
That's up first. Sorry.
There's just too many highlights.
No, it's not 10 days. I'm just trying to shock everybody.
You celebrating the holidays early or what?
30 seconds, talk about the Methodist partnership.
We actually working with the Methodist College to actually go back to, we actually started a partnership about 5 years ago under a Ross Service Coordination Grant through her, and we actually lost the grant. We actually partnered with the school to actually train and place about 45 of our residents through a CNA and CMA classes. So what Cliff and I met with the staff out there about a month ago, we're trying to just go back to try to revamp, start the program again. So we wait for a proposal to come in hopefully next week to get us back in those classes. One thing that they talk about, that industry is really thriving right now. So we're going to try to get a few of our residents trained and be employed. But one thing that they want to add on that proposal also, they're going to try to guarantee us to try to place them some kind of job employment.
Who are we dealing with, or who are we meeting with?
We're Methodist with Dr. Maxey, and I know she's leaving. We found out.
She's leaving.
Yeah, she's leaving. We just found out last week that she's leaving also. She's been there, I don't know how long she's been there.
Yeah, so I just have some connection there, so that's why I was asking.
It's okay, we can, I just call you. I always know somebody from somewhere. But thank you. But that's it.
Any other, clearly, Sal, you need to talk to Commissioner Bradley.
Yeah. I will follow up.
Thank you. Thank you as always, Commissioner Bradley. Anyone else have any questions or comments for Sal? If not, we'll move on to public safety.
Good
Morning,
morning.
Chris.
Good morning. You have my report in front of you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Reports look like they've kind of leveled off, which is typical for this time of year. We are seeing an increase in trespassers with the homeless population with the colder weather moving in, so working with that. And the police department says it's basically a citywide issue. We met with them earlier this week, and they're very aware of it, helping with that issue as well. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions or comments for Chris? We have no legal report because we have no legal counsel.
I still just want to point out to collect $106,000 in bad debt.
Yes. No, well done.
We're going to budget for $150,000 for 2015. We're going to try to shoot for 175 in collections, but for 15 we're going to budget for about 150K.
Well, we're doing about 10 a month. The last few months been about 10 a month. So.
Okay. That is the end of our reports. I don't have any new business.
One thing I'd like to mention.
I just want to give our executive director and staff and others, and probably this board, had a conversation with the chair a couple of, yesterday, one of them. Anyway, I was telling her that I keep taking on big jobs instead of these little jobs. And I wish I could do something that takes about 2 or 3 weeks, but Chris, as you pointed out, we've got a serious problem with homeless that's going to get worse. And there is I just wanted you all to know that there's a comprehensive effort being started, kind of being led by me right now. But we're bringing in, we've talked to Mike Sacklar with the Santa Francis House. We've talked with our planning department and planning staff with the city. We've brought in some behavioral health specialists. Specifically, we talked to brought in the president of Emmanuel Medical Center, Doris Moore, the Center for Holistic Development, and Kenny McMorris with Charleston Health Center. And the next step is there's been a study that was done that was commissioned by a couple of our philanthropists in the community. That study is going to be incorporated in what we do next. We're looking at the potential of expanding Santa Francis House and developing that as a campus. But you know, the one caveat that's going to be really serious for us is the sewer separation project that will begin sometime after the first of the year. They will close that Greenbelt Park where a number of homeless go. And so they're going to be, I've gotten a lot of concerns from businesses where homeless are hanging out, concerns from some of the towers. I've talked to a couple of people in our towers. Conestoga Place and Concord Square are really getting hit pretty good with panhandlers and others. So we're trying to get a handle on that, but it's a massive effort. But several in our community, philanthropic community and others are aware of it, the city's aware of it. There is a plan in place, and at some point in time, probably in the very near future, I'm going to want to bring in at least our chair and our executive director to begin looking at this thing holistically and what we do over the next 3 months or so, because I think while it's cold, they're pretty much captured. When it gets warm, we're going to have a difficult time in some of our neighborhoods and some of our towers if we don't get a handle on it. So just giving you a heads up that there's a massive effort on the way that, you know, hopefully will bear fruit. We'll be able to put together a plan, a strong strategic plan that we can move on, hopefully by no later than March, early April. So I just wanted to share that with everybody. We are working on that, Chris, and because we know it's a serious issue, and it came to my attention, and I just decided that there needs to be a champion in it to take it on, to move it to the next level.
Do we have a number with the homeless population in this community?
Oh,
Every
Chris,
year,
the numbers go.
every year, over 7,000 people experience homelessness on any given night. There's probably 1,000 to 1,500 people that are homeless.
They do a population count twice a year.
Yeah.
The
And the-
Continuum of Care does.
They'll do a point in time count where they just count the actual number that particular night. But then when you look at the total data throughout a year, unique experiences of homelessness is over 7,000, and then there's several that repeat. And I would also add, in addition to what Ben's saying, is just how critical the housing role is in this. You don't end homelessness without housing. And so I think a long time our community solution and national solution has been around Band-Aid solutions. Let's build more shelter beds, let's temporarily house people in places, but that's not the long-term solution that we have. So the partnership that we play as a housing authority is vital because the people that are homeless are our population that we're serving. And it's
Omaha area did get approved as one of the metro areas for the I can't say the name of the project, but it's funneling money for the veterans.
Just the Vets Project.
The Vets Project. And all the other mayors in the area signed off on it. Our mayor would not. So
Don't start me.
Yeah, I know. But I'm also starting to get involved in the continuum of care, and I think Ryan's involved with that from our staff.
it's on the match board,
So, and Charles and Ann do a tremendous job with that. And there's a lot of good things going on there. So But it is a major deal. And you hate to say that because of what's happened with a couple deaths, but if that's what's going to draw the attention to it and get some people in action, you know.
We're hoping that it will,
Yeah.
because when I went over to Sienna Francis' house, and I spent, first of all, I took a couple of cases of toilet paper over, but guys.
Because they were out.
They were
Totally
They got a
out.
They were
huge
totally out. They were totally out. And so the problem is acute and it needs to be addressed. And as Jamie said, it needs to be addressed in a more holistic way with a longer-term solution. And like I said, we've got the philanthropic community. Some members of that has already commissioned a study. We're going to be looking at that study and bringing people in. And the housing authority is going to have to play a significant role.
I think we all got to understand something, and we talked about this the other day with Len and Jennifer. We need to do a better job of keeping people in our units that want to be in our units, because it just increases that homeless population. So this board, we've got to have that conversation on, and our management staff, public housing, to what extent are we making that determination to evict somebody for non-payment? And we had this discussion last month. When we make that decision, as unfortunately today, the houser of last resort, that has implications on, the folks at Sienna Francis. It has implications for the Max folks. It has overall implications for the community. I can't speak for why the mayor has not signed off on that. That's another.
But it got done, so.
It got done.
I will say that, from our perspective, we have to have a more consistent approach to evicting somebody, and whether that be for a set dollar amount for non-payment, or whether that be for a month, a time frame. We need to have that discussion, and it's a tough discussion.
Well, go ahead.
I know what you're saying, but I think a massive critical component of keeping people who are the most vulnerable to be housed is the permanent supportive services that wrap around them. So the mental health, the substance treatment, the family support, the child care, all those little pieces that help them be able to budget with limited resources they do have so that they can pay. It's that whole supportive service piece that we have very much kind of like fallen off the radars. Yeah, so.
From OHA's perspective, and unfortunately, we got to call it like it is, from the housing authority is we house folks. You know what, we only get about $650,000 a year in family self-sufficiency monies for these types of supportive service initiatives. So understand, when we start to branch out and do these other things, that's really how this agency got in trouble for the last 15 years.
So that's why we need to look for partnerships and things that we've talked about.
Yeah, we would never expect us to be the support
Absolutely.
service.
But
I'm just
those-
making that
yeah.
distinction because, Mr. Armstrong was awesome, and he's awesome nationwide. But, in so many respects, when we tried the social engineering piece, scatter site housing, that's a tough way of property management. My staff, I don't even look at them, they'll tell us that. So we have to make sure that whatever we do is coordinated. We develop those partnerships with our folks. Even with Len Romano and the stuff that they're doing at the Southwide with the seniors. I mean, those are the types of positive initiatives, collaborations that we need to do from the standpoint of making sure that the folks who are in our units stay in our units. Because at the end of the day, it is costing us between $3,500 and $4,000 to turn that unit over. And it's not sustainable.
And that's part of the, as we move forward next year, at least one of my goals is we strategically plan what we do with this agency. From an operations perspective, we need to have, a cohesive operations plan for how we're going to deal with getting residents, qualified residents in our units, keep them in the units, and managing them, getting them the assistance they need for partnerships to stay in the units, getting them the financial service education, which we've talked about. That's all part of a whole plan that gets us, and when we do that, then we reduce our expenses, we increase our revenue, and we can do more things. You've got my commitment, I know you got Mr. Scott's commitment to help you in any way that we can, and I know you know that this board actually has a wealth between Commissioner Berglund, Commissioner Romano, Commissioner Bradley, a wealth of knowledge on the subject.
Exactly.
So.
The other thing I'll say, just very briefly, the other thing that we did, the reason we brought in the behavioral health specialists is because one of the things we got to look at is our committal laws for those who have mental illness, those who have substance abuse issues. We've got to look at that, and so we've got Ann Schumacher, who's the CEO at Emmanuel. She's looking at best practices around the country, going to get back with us about what our committal laws need to look like and what they may need to look like in the future. We may have to go to the legislature for some naming legislation to address that, so that we've got people, so that we have an easier time getting people into the system who need to be in the system for mental health issues or for substance abuse issues, and finding the resources to help take that. So it's a massive effort. I just wanted to give you a heads up about it, and as we move forward, there's going to be a lot of inclusion of several of us in this room before we try to address that in a way.
And I'm glad Mr. Forsberg is still here to at least understand and listen to the conversation, since you'll be responsible for next year for evictions based on non-payment. That we're having some conversations internally about what level of stage you do that, just so that you're aware of how that plays into everything else that we do. I'm glad
Thank you,
you're here now. So, do we have anything else, new business or new information? If not, we need to have an executive session for a discussion of some negotiations.
So moved.
The motion is second to go into executive session. Roll call.
Commissioner Bradley?
Yes.
Commissioner Romano?
Yes.
Commissioner Gray?
Yes.
Commissioner Berglund? Yes. Commissioner Berglund?
Yes.
Thanks, guys. Thanks.